So I got a Canon EOS R just before the lockdown in the UK, and in that time I've been able to use it for some quarantine photo sessions. I also used it to make a lockdown short film called Rocket Girl. Link to that down below, make sure you go check it out. I also filmed my entire 1 hour and 21 minute Skillshare course on resource filmmaking on the EOS R in 4K. Again, link to that down below. And I recently had the opportunity to actually go outside and use it on a photo shoot. So what do I think about the Canon EOS R? Originally, I wasn't going to get an EOS R. I was eagerly awaiting the release of the Canon R5 and was hoping for an earlier release in March, April time, which didn't happen. Then I got a payout from a project just before the end of the financial year, so I decided to invest some of that cash into the Canon EOS R and a 16-35mm f-stop 2.8 Canon L lens, and then lockdown happened. So I decided to do what a lot of other creatives were doing, a quarantine photo shoot to test out the abilities of the EOS R. And my initial opinions of this camera have been very good. To me, it's very similar to the Canon 5D Mark IV, and I'll probably do a side-by-side review of these two cameras very soon in the future. Now, before I do any reviews, I generally like to use the product that I'm reviewing as much as possible to give as balanced a summary as possible, and having used the EOS R now on quite a few different projects, I feel that it's time to talk about Canon's first full-frame mirrorless camera. So first up, let's quickly talk about the ergonomics. The size of the EOS R compared to the 5D Mark IV is what I instantly loved about this camera. Now, I know I just said that I would make a comparison video of the EOS R and the 5D Mark IV separately, but I just have to mention this point real quick, as the 5D Mark IV weighs in at 890 grams, and the EOS R, being a mirrorless camera, comes in at 660 grams. And it might not seem like that much of a difference, but use them all day on your photo shoot or for filming, and you will definitely notice that your back and arms are hurting a lot less with the EOS R compared to the 5D Mark IV. Additionally, this also makes it a lot easier for mounting on things like sliders and gimbals for your video productions. Another great feature about this camera is the fully articulating touchscreen, which makes it ideal for vlogging and YouTube videos, or maybe even corporate videos where you need to film yourself. Or if you're shooting at a funny angle, for example being low down, and you need to move that screen around to see what your shots actually look like. So there are quite a few positives of just having that movable screen. The much loved dual pixel autofocus or touch focus, which has over 5,655 autofocus points, along with eye tracking and Wi-Fi connectivity, are all integrated into this camera and are pretty much necessities for modern creatives. The EOS R has a 30.1 megapixel full frame sensor, giving you expandable ISO ranges from 50 to 102,400, which is great for low light photography and filming sessions. And you also have a sensor protector on there too, which shuts up to protect your sensor when you switch your camera off or detach your lens. Another thing that I love about this camera is that it uses the same batteries as the 5D Mark IV, as well as the Mark III, the 6D, the 6D Mark II. So it's just so convenient not to have to buy new batteries, making it just a little simpler and easier for all of us that are slowly upgrading our kit. Now, the EOS R spec says that you can take about 370 shots on a single LPE6N battery, but I probably got more than double that on a single battery before I had to swap it out during my photo shoot. It probably does depend a lot on the condition of your battery, and I personally always make sure that I use Canon branded batteries in my cameras. The EOS R is an RF mount camera, and I presently don't own any RF glass, just yet. Fortunately, the bundle that I bought came with the Canon control ring mount adapter EF to EOS R, which means that I can use it with all my legacy glass while I remortgage my house to be able to afford the new RF glass. Now, one of the drawbacks of the EOS R is that it only has one card slot, and I know for many of you professionals out there, this is a bit of a deal breaker. Yes, it's a risk. The risk of card failure is real, and I don't know what to say to make you feel better about this situation. So what's it like using the Canon EOS R in a practical setting? Well, for our photo shoot, I set it to RAW plus high quality JPEGs, and I shot with the 70-200mm f-stop 2.8 Canon L lens version 2, and I tried out some wide shots with the 16-35mm f-stop 2.8 Canon L lens. And if we jump real quick into Photoshop here, we can examine some of these raw portrait files. And straight away, that dual pixel autofocus really helps in getting sharpness around the eyes. And I just love those Canon colors too. We can pull back the highlight slightly as it was a bit of a sunny day and maybe add a little bit of vibrance in there. And in Photoshop itself, maybe we could just push the brightness in the eyes a little to make them pop out on screen. And also I used this Pixel G1S RGB light to create some weird contrasty shots on the day with different colored lights. And this is such a useful, versatile little light, and I'll be making a complete review of that later on the Kai Creative YouTube channel, so make sure you watch out for that one. With a continuous drive of 8 frames per second and shooting at 1/4000th and 1/8000th of a second, I was able to create some interesting quarantine photos with some nice freeze frame shots. Also, I tried out some longer exposure times with sparklers, which I hadn't done before, and it was pretty fun, and you can see some of the results here. When it comes to video, you can shoot at most of the standard video settings that you get today. 1080p at 24, 25, 30, 50 and 60 frames per second, depending on whether you have it set to PAL or NTSC. You have the 4K option at 24 and 25 frames per second, and an option to shoot at 120 frames per second, but only at 720p, which I don't think I've ever seen anyone ever use. 4K has a considerable crop of 1.8, but saying that, I filmed my entire Skillshare course on the EOS R in 4K, and I offset that crop by using the 16 to 35mm f-stop 2.8 Canon L lens. And if you're interested in resource filmmaking and filmmaking on a budget, then do go and check out that class. The link is in the description below. One of the options that you get is the ability to film in C-Log as standard on the EOS R. And what I mean by that is that you don't have to pay to get C-Log installed on your camera. It's already there in the menu system. So you have your 8-bit C-Log internal recording giving you 256 levels per RGB channel, but also 10-bit C-Log external recording. And as far as I'm aware, this can only be done in 4K. So it's cropped in, and I have yet to play around with it, but the examples that I've seen online look pretty awesome. You know, getting that 10-bit image with over 1 billion colors can't be that bad at all. Also, according to the DxOMark.com, at its base sensitivity of ISO 100, the Canon EOS R has a good dynamic range of 13.5 EV, but it does fall down a little bit in this area when compared to its other competitors. So should you consider getting a Canon EOS R? Well, for filmmakers, definitely. 1080p, 8-bit C-Log with the option to output 10-bit externally, along with the 4K option, make it a powerful video tool. Many popular influencers have used this camera for a long time, and quite a few seem to film at 1080p and are upscaling it to 4K in post, and they say that most people can't actually tell the difference. So that's a possible option for you if you want to up your filmmaking game. As mentioned earlier, I personally have used the EOS R to make a lockdown short film, from shooting the standard scenes to using it in front of a green screen, and I also used it a lot in very low light conditions, but I feel that it fared reasonably well. And again, you can be the judge of that by checking out the link to that short film, Rocket Girl, down in the description below. For photography, professional photographers might take issue with the lack of dual card slots. We've mentioned that already. You only have one SD slot, and I know that many of you out there would not want to risk only having one SD card while working on a job. If that's the case for you, then maybe stick with the 5D Mark IV or 3 or whatever you're using at the moment, and then jump to the Canon R5 or R6. The price point will probably be make or break for many of you here. With the release of the R5 and R6 mirrorless cameras, people will no doubt be selling their older EOS Rs for some extra pocket money to put towards the newer, shinier models. So you might be able to pick up a second-hand body for a decent deal. At the moment, I'm seeing these sell for about £1,000 to £1,500 or $1,500 to $2,000, depending on the condition for second-hand models. New models are still selling for around £1,500 to £2,000 or $1,800 to $2,500, depending on where you go and what you actually get with it. But we might be seeing some price cuts to that quite soon due to the newer models being released. I personally feel that this camera is an incredible investment. As I've already highlighted in this video, I've only had it for a few months and I've already been able to do so much with it. And that's partly down to the free time that I've acquired through lockdown and the loss of pretty much all of 2020's freelance work, but we won't talk about that. I know many of you will be looking at this camera for something specific, maybe your work or your hobby, possibly travel. Travel. But for photography through to filmmaking, this camera is like a Swiss Army knife for creativity. It really is very versatile. So what do you guys think? Are you going to get one? Or will you perhaps jump straight to the newer R5 or R6 models? Or even stick with what you already own? Let me know down in the comment section below. As always, if you have any comments or questions, let me know down in the comment section below and I'll do my best to get back to you. And if you haven't done so already, guys, do consider subscribing to the Kai Creative YouTube channel and hitting that little bell for notifications. So that's it for me today, guys. All that's left to say is stay creative, stay safe, imagine, implement, and inspire. And I'll see you next time on Kai Creative.